For years, when we began media literacy exercises, we would always ask the questions, what U.S. president was known for falling down a lot?
Raindrops kept falling on their heads as Gerald and Betty Ford arrived in Austria.
We followed that up with another question, which asked, what U.S. president gave Indonesia the go-ahead to invade East Timor, which led to one of the worst genocides of the 20th century? The answer to both questions was Gerald Ford. In a media culture that thrives on superficiality, more people tend to know about Ford falling down on a few occasions, especially since it was the subject of political satire on Saturday Night Live.
Live from New York, it's Saturday night!
Gerald Ford died on December 26, 2006, and most of the corporate media repeated the idea that he healed the nation. The Grand Rapids Press headline for December 27th stated, "He saved a nation." But what does it actually mean when pundits and official historians say that Ford healed a nation? Ford pardoned Nixon, which is to say that he did not seek an indictment of Nixon for illegal activities during what is now known as the Watergate scandal. The Ford Museum literature says that by pardoning Nixon, Ford helped restore confidence in the office of the presidency that was negatively affected under the Nixon administration. Is this the reality, or was it a way to sidestep any serious investigation of the illegal practices of the Nixon administration, which ultimately would lead people to see the very nature of the U.S. imperial project? When Nixon's crimes are mentioned, what most people think of is the wiretapping of the Democrats before the election. What are usually omitted from the official record are Nixon's war crimes in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. This is what official historians mean when they say that Ford healed the nation, that the American public was protected from the ugly realities of U.S. foreign policy. Well, what are we being protected from? Looking at a brief history of the Ford administration might help us to answer that question. Ford became Nixon's vice president on October of 1973 and was sworn in as president in August of 1974. He served as president until Carter took the Oval Office in January of 1977. Ford supported the repressive government in the Philippines in its counterinsurgency war against the insurgents. During the coup in Argentina in 1976, Ford supported the generals who took power and slaughtered thousands of dissidents. Under Ford, the U.S. provided millions of dollars in military aid to the right-wing movement in Angola, known as UNITA. He negotiated military bases in Spain with the fascist dictator Franco. Ford maintained the illegal terror war and embargo against Cuba, and was president during the final days of the U.S. occupation of South Vietnam. But probably the foreign policy that best defines Ford was his support for the Indonesian invasion of East Timor. Much has been written about what took place in the meeting between Ford, Henry Kissinger, and Indonesian President Suharto on December 5th and 6th in 1975. But it wasn't until December of 2001 when the National Security Archives finally obtained declassified documentation of what took place. What we now know is that Ford and Kissinger not only knew of Indonesia's plans to invade East Timor, but that they offered diplomatic and military support for the invasion, which became a multi-year and bloody genocidal campaign.
What I saw was that my own government was very much involved in what was going on in East Timor. We were providing most of the weaponry, helicopters, logistical support, food, uniforms, ammunition, all the expendables that the Indonesians needed to conduct this war. You can be 100% certain that Suharto was explicitly given the green light to do what he did.
Word of the invasion got out quickly. According to Noam Chomsky's The Washington Connection and Third World Fascism, Ford and Kissinger were confronted by reporters when they landed in Hawaii later that day. Ford said, quote, "We'll talk about that later." But his press secretary, Ron Nessen, later gave a statement that read, "The United States is always concerned about the use of violence. The President hopes it can be resolved peacefully." Ford's concern quickly led to more military support as the Indonesian army massacred East Timorese peasants by the thousands. This is the history that is omitted by much of the media and the academic in this country. Ford himself did much to limit government transparency during his presidency. With revelations of U.S. abuses abroad through the CIA, Ford attempted to preempt any serious investigation by creating his own committee headed up by the then Vice President Nelson Rockefeller. This did not sit well with some members of Congress, and an official investigation was headed up by Senator Frank Church. Known as the Church Committee, they discovered that the U.S. had been engaged in illegal activities such as assassinations and attempted assassinations of foreign heads of state. In his newest book, Safe for Democracy, The Secret Wars of the CIA, National Security Archive staffer John Prados reveals that Ford tried to block the Church Committee hearings and then attempted to get members of Congress to not support the findings. In 1974, Congress amended the Freedom of Information Act over Ford's veto. Quote, "The new provisions took effect on February 19, 1975, and obliged the executive branch to disclose information of importance to public debate on national security issues," according to Graham Mount, author of the book 895 Days That Changed the World, The Presidency of Gerald Ford. So it seems that despite the efforts of some to investigate and challenge U.S. foreign policy practices during the Ford administration, Grand Rapids' first son tried to prevent the public from knowing what the U.S. government was doing in its name. Not only is this important information on the role that Ford played as president, it continues to be crucial since we are currently confronted with an administration that takes pride in its illegal wars abroad.
Jumping, I keep trying to fly. When I think of my mother, I can't help but cry. I wish she could have found a place in the sun, but at 38 years, a day's work